Broken promises from many other American presidents. You know that. They kept promising. I never understood it until I got there. There was a lot of pressure put on these presidents. It was put on me too, but I didn't yield to the pressure. But every president for decades said, we're going to do it. The difference is I kept my promise and officially recognized the capital of Israel and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. Isn't that right, Miriam? Look at Miriam. She's back there. Stand up, Miriam. Stand up. Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office. They'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I can think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got $60 billion in the bank, $60 billion. And I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it, and they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. He was a very aggressive, very supportive of me. And he'd call up, can I come over and see you? I say, Sheldon, I'm the president of the United States. It doesn't work that way. He'd come in, we would do. But they were very responsible for so much, including getting me thinking about Golan Heights, which is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to Israel. Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say. We love you. Thank you, darling, for being here. That's a great honor. Great honor. She's a wonderful woman.
Yes, just some highlights from the bizarro Nuremberg. Oops, sorry. We're good with you, Trump. The bizarro Nuremberg that took place in the genocidal Israeli Knesset with Donald Trump there thanking Miriam Adelson, major benefactor to his campaigns, with the stipulation in the first go-around that Trump deliver the Golan Heights and the embassy in Jerusalem. One of the best things that's ever happened, David. The Golan Heights, that was good for you?
It was great. We loved it so much. I mean, that is the president of the United States of America in a foreign country bragging about how he has achieved so much for members of that foreign country because major donors and supporters of his campaign who visit him more than anyone else have been pressuring him to do it. I mean, I don't know if it gets any more naked than that about the state of this country and this hell that we're living through.
Yeah, and you know this whole dual loyalty, it's a red herring. The truth is, people can have multiple citizenships. It's fine. You can't support violent ethno-nationalism, and that's what Zionists do, and that's why I mean the America firstness of it all. Well, she wouldn't say. Well, it's good that she can spend $150 million in our elections.
No, it's good that she has more voice than the rest of us and has special access to the president, right? But can't decide which one she likes. Which one she likes.
It doesn't work like that. But yeah, come over whenever you want. You're the most. I mean, there's no subtext really. Like our job to like sort of like suss all this stuff out.
Yeah,
when he just says like you have pockets full of money. You want us to formally recognize territory you took with war crimes. That's the pressure. The pressure that I didn't give into was to not to not formally recognize war crimes, whether that's the Golan Heights, whether that's East Jerusalem settlements, and just the whole occupation. Yeah, that's not the pressure we're talking about in this situation, Trump. The problem is people like Miriam Adelson buying our elections, and they don't care about this country from the president of the United States as much as you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we'll see. I think we have some more kind of sound maybe coming a little bit later about how naked this whole relationship is. But I mean, Matt, we talked about it a little bit last Tuesday at the beginning of the show too, because that's about when this deal had been announced. I'm curious your initial thoughts. I mean, both what this temporary ceasefire means. I mean, I'll just say on my end, it's nice, to know for a second that they're not dropping bombs on children. Though I have very little confidence that Israel won't come up with excuse after excuse to consistently break this deal. But I'm curious, like, how you're thinking about these first days before we get into the kind of larger context of it all.
Yeah, I mean, emotionally, I like to see happy Palestinians being reunited with people. I like that. But like you said, nobody who has any sort of awareness about this can trust this last at all. And I think, Mona Yakubian, a name that Michael would have dwelled on, I think, a woman who, she's a director of the Middle East program for CSIS, and for Strategic International Studies. She says, peace has to start somewhere. It's a euphoric moment. Unfortunately, I think there are several potential points of failure going forward. And these are the points of failure that we are long familiar with, that go back a long time. Trump himself has a quote here saying, a lot of people like the one-state solution. Some people like the two-state solution. We'll have to see. And his other quote was, the first steps of peace are always the hardest. That is not true. I don't need an international relations sort of degree to find out that like a tepid ceasefire is a thing that has existed. The real problem historically in this region is getting Israel to
not break the deal. Yeah,
exactly. And to not use the slightest pretext from the people that they are occupying and conquering as a reason to start a war, as they call it, which, as we all know, is a attempt at ethnic cleansing and genocide.
Yeah, and I mean, there are so many pitfalls. I mean, one, I think the kind of irrationality and barbarism that is Israel at this point, and two, I mean, do people have tremendous amounts of confidence in the potential security forces who are going to be going into Gaza? I mean, this is something that is rife with potential huge pitfalls. And I think the fact too that there are aspects of this deal, particularly the big ones of Hamas kind of like turning their weapons over, that haven't been agreed to, right? So there are some major questions here for sure.
And that's the weird thing about this whole Knesset moment or this victory tour is there are like the Israel crowd be like, if you thought this was a genocide, why aren't you celebrating? It's because there's no Nuremberg on the horizon for any of these people. Yeah. The monopoly of violence is still with the genocidal fascists. So how can anybody have any sense of security about this, especially when we know like the real reason for this, the sort of like the operators here that were that put it over the edge were Qatar, which Trump decided, or Israel decided, we're going to lob a bomb at a major regional ally of America just because we've been getting away with it forever. Why not? That scared powerful people, the type of people that gift Trump multi-million-dollar jets to replace Air Force One. And that's a whole different thing, unfortunately, than slaughtering Palestinian civilians.
I mean, can a state like Israel kind of maintain its thorough internal contradictions through all of this? I mean, there's a part of this that is very worrying to watch because you see, as you were saying, Matt, like this is a state and people celebrating the fact that like they're being able to get away with a lot of the things that they want to get away with. And now they have some kind of really kind of like, if you read anything about how this came together, and or really know anything about the region and look at the text of it, I mean, a fairly shaky agreement that potentially will give Israel more justification, not that they ever needed or wanted anything like that, to go and do all kinds of horrible things, not just to Gaza, but ramping up what they're up to in the West Bank, for example. Right, this is something that like it sets Israel up to say like, hey, look, we tried to negotiate with them, we tried to deal with them, and now that failed because of the ungovernability of the Palestinian people or something like that. Right, coming up with some kind of excuse or even staging something, I wouldn't put it past them. So it is something that, like, again, we'll see. Now, there's other folks who think that, like, hey, this might be something that Israel wants to kind of maintain slowly so that they can kind of get the eyes away from what they have been doing for decades now as well, right? Because this has been a long-term project, and this has been, a mass genocidal event. But maybe, I mean, the blockade on Gaza, and I always have to remind people of this, did not begin on October 7th, right? This is an ongoing, long-time thing.
Exactly, and that's what feels sort of really gross about this moment, is just a return with after what Israel used to call cutting the grass. This was more like burning the forest, and now it's to look at our press, then sort of return to the same sort of thing of Time magazine like glorifying Trump as if he accomplished some major thing. Like, I remember they put the Oslo Accords in our social studies book as like the most recent thing I remember learning about in high school, and it was like as if that was like some great achievement. And no, it was like this sort of imperial bullshit done with like state letterhead, and that is really just about trying to increasingly marginalize people that are inconvenient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do we have this video of the agreement here? Of this with what's his name, Hegseth? Oh, Matt, you've muted yourself. Sorry.
Yeah, this is the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, here with the Qatari official.
No one other than President Trump could have achieved the peace that we believe will be a lasting peace in Gaza. And Qatar played a substantial role from the beginning, working with our folks to ensure that came about. So I want to thank you for that historic piece. We look forward to joining the president as that gets, it's already been delivered, but as that's formally signed as well. And I'm also proud that today we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho. The location will be host a contingent of Qatari F-15s and pilots to enhance our combined training, increase lethality, interoperability. It's just another example of our partnership. And I hope Your Excellency, that you can count on us.
So congratulations, Idaho.
And congratulations, Qatar, as well. I mean, It is so amazing to just see how naked all of this is as well, right? I mean, in the same way as with Trump talking about like, hey, I had this billionaire, we love this billionaire. She came into my office as much as she wanted to, and we gave her Jerusalem, and we gave her all this. Seeing Hegseth, just pretty nakedly prove correct all of the kind of beliefs about like the military industrial complex. And it one thing about the Trump administration that I think is very unique to them, because in a lot of ways what you see from Trump is like bloodthirsty kind of right-wing politics that have existed in this country for a long time. What is always amazing about them is how naked all this kind of stuff is. And between Hegseth and Trump, and those two are so similar in many ways as well, that you do see, you do really see it with them.
Yeah, elite educated New York TV boys. There was the quote from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. And this actually sort of goes into our later guest in the program, Milei, Alex Skopic. But he said, stabilizing Argentina is America first. And that is so clearly like an Orwellian doublespeak that it almost like it reminds me of the book. Like it gives me flashbacks to reading that. Like the war is peace. I mean, I guess at least we're changing the Pentagon or whatever to like the War Department, which is nice to call it instead of the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
But to say stabilizing Argentina is America first by a hedge fund guy who has a whole bunch of buddies who have made investments in Argentina. It's such a joke.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to this next bit here, Matt, because while we have seen Trump double down and expand this horrible genocide, this is somebody who is going to say that they got this ceasefire. I mean, Trump is definitely making a play for the Nobel Peace Prize, as we've talked a little bit about, Matt. We'll be curious to see, how that affects his willingness to fight for this deal. Matt was saying before, what were you telling me before we got going here?
About what specifically? About
Trump wanting the Nobel Peace Prize and maybe
yes.
just keeping his attention for a little bit longer.
So people know the woman from Venezuela got the Nobel Peace Prize, but Trump has made no secret that he had his eye on this for a long time. And I think, and maybe this is like the hope, is that Trump wants that because Obama has it. And ridiculously, to be fair. Like this looks good. It's like in the moment of them meeting, it's him doing this peace shit, which we don't really credit, but like in professional sports, when it's the last year in a player's contract, they like to do their best to sort of keep up appearances to make sure they can get rewarded at the end of it. Hopefully, look, if Trump can keep the ceasefire in place, a year isn't that much. Like if he can keep this in place for the rest of his term, I'm not going to begrudge him a Nobel Peace Prize, frankly. But that's even as I say that, it's like all this other like Golan Heights style shit of just basically cementing in a status quo that has been denied by everywhere from like evangelical Zionists to liberal Zionists. It's hard to really even promise that. I'll probably have some reservations, even if God willing, there's not a continued slaughter of the scale we've been seeing.
No, and as you should, and I think it just shows something about how perverted this country is and how perverted our politics are. That we are like semi-seriously opining about like, I hope that Trump's desire to get this stupid ass award prevents him from like seeing through a final solution in Gaza, right? Like that shows how fucked our politics is, and it should be something where being in opposition to this is as simple as it comes for politics. But the opposition party not only is timid and tepid on this, they oversaw the large portion of this genocide. And unless you had something that brings us to Kamala Harris here.
I was going to say complicit. Like, people give them too much shit about cowardly. Like, no, they are actively complicit. They're just not willing to say it with their chest like Trump is.
And many of y'all who watch this program have probably seen the many videos of protests at Kamala Harris's book talk. And those protests are good, and they should be happening everywhere that she speaks for the rest of her life, because this is somebody who played a distinct role in not just, timidly moving around the edges at this critical moment, but actively playing a role in providing cover for the government, both the American government and the Israeli government, as they were engaging in this ongoing genocide. And all of the big talk has been, well, you know what, David, it wasn't fair for Kamala to criticize Kamala about this because she was running for president, and that's very hard. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions there. Well, she's reminded all of these protesters at every single moment that she's not the president, so why protest her? Well, that's exciting for us because that means that she can finally speak clearly about these issues. This is her getting interviewed on MSNBC just the other day on the genocide. This is post ceasefire announcement.
A lot of folks in your party have called what's happening in Gaza a genocide. Do you agree with that?
I think that, listen, it is a term of law that a court will decide, but I will tell you that when you look at the number of children that have been killed, the number of innocent civilians that have been killed, the refusal to give aid and support, we should all step back and ask this question and be honest about it. Yeah.
Wow, a tremendous honesty from the former vice president there. I mean, it's a non-answer. It shows again that her decisions were 100% her own, as both the vice president of the United States and as the front runner and the presidential candidate of the Democratic Party when she ran, and she still holds these today. Incapacity to speak clearly about a genocide. It is unbelievable, one, that anybody's doing this, but especially her, when what she could be doing would be maybe putting blame on somebody like Trump. But because she still has ambitions and because she played such a big role in this atrocity, you get that nonsense speak. We need to be very clear about this question by not saying anything about it of substance at all. Okay.
Yeah, this is a legacy play, a very corporate PR legacy play for someone who is a villain in history. It was Kamala Harris's decision not to have what she called a Palestinian spokesperson, which is already like alien language. Speak at. There was a state rep, Rula Roman, who is way more graceful to the Democratic Party than people need to be, in my opinion. And she was given nothing. And that was Kamala Harris's decision above anybody else's. And how dare the Democratic Party play this shit about Fannie Lou Hamer, the sharecropper woman who broke the color barrier in 1964, to speak against voter suppression there, because Harris is like Lyndon Johnson, who decided to run an emergency press conference to make sure people didn't see that. She made that kind of decision. That's her place in history. She can say all this shit when it's useful on the campaign trail, so like, I was the girl who could have been bused to school or whatever. She is a villain, a suppressive villain who needs to be, again, removed from anybody's political imagination who wants to do something constructive in this country.
Yeah. And, also let's not forget, she did all of that to lose to Donald Trump in an embarrassing historic election that has made the country a much less safe place and put us on the path for a much darker future.
In only 107 days, she accomplished all of that.
I think we need to do a little bit more on this book and this book tour, Matt, because it has been a truly clarifying moment in her legacy. The continued excuses and the weakness of that party, but we'll have to put a pin in that and save that for future programming down the line. Because she's
still saying the Titans of Industry thing. Like, she thinks that's a banger. That's like part of her stump speech.
I can't believe that this didn't resonate all across the nation. Well, on that, let's get to our guests here. We have two really great guests. First up, we are going to speak with Hartzell Gray about their very exciting campaign in Missouri, taking on genocide. They stand with the Palestinian people, but standing up against gerrymandering and talking about the ways in which progressives can fight for a better future, even if, like, let's say, like, the map has been moved around in a way that might not be like in the Cook's political report favorable to Democrats. It was a really interesting conversation. I was really happy to have him on the program. And then, Matt, right after that, we're going to be going to South America. Is that correct?
Yep, we got Alex Skopic had a good write-up of the Javier Milei crash, frankly. And I guess we're foaming the runway for him with another $20 billion. So you're welcome, libertarians. Keep trying to prove that those principles. I guess you got an infinite budget to do it. But yeah, that will be coming up right after Hartzell.
So you're going to get all of that if you're on the free side. But if you are a patron at patreon.com/leftreckoning, you're going to get all this ad-free plus the post game, where Matt and I, we got some really fun Obama video. He's learned his lesson, and we're very excited to hear about all the ways that he's come around to our side of politics. And then also, one of our favorite new podcasters has a pretty good grilling of a pretty odious, genocide denier, war crime defender. Cory Booker,
crypto Bitcoin Cory.
Being grilled by Miss Welch, right?
Yep, Jennifer Welch of the I've Had It podcast.
You're going to want to see all of that, folks. So patreon.com/leftreckoning to support us. You also get those Sunday shows, but you get the whole main show ad-free, plus the post game where we watch more fun videos, hang out, and also take your questions. But without further ado, let's enjoy these conversations here.
Welcome, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck, with me, David Griscom. Hello, David.
Hey, all.
And joining us now is Hartzell Gray. Hartzell is a candidate for Missouri's 4th District for Congress. Hartzell, thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Oh, my guys, this is amazing. Thank you all so much. I am long time, first time as a radio person. I have to say that. So, yeah, congrats on everything, continued success, and thanks for having me on the show.
Of course, happy to have you on, and happy when candidates are radio personalities too, because it makes the interview process a little bit easier. But before we get to you as a person, Hartzell, Missouri's 4th District, I looked at a map of it, rather large, spanning from Kansas City suburbs all the way to Columbus. Tell people about Missouri's 4th District and your relationship to it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, at what point did you look at the map? Because, it's a quick refresh and it's crazy, my friend. But yeah, I love my people. Like, we are just a little bit of everything. We are a microcosm of this country, right? Especially now on these new maps, which we will, I'm sure, talk about in a little bit. But yeah, you've got from downtown Kansas City where I'm at, so you've got urban areas, but also we've got suburbans, we've got rural area, we've got people, which I think sometimes we get so caught up, especially now in this gerrymandering fight, which is war. By the way, this is a war on working class folks. People forget that everyone deserves universal health care. Everybody deserves the right to be housed. Everyone deserves to have a climate that we can have that's going to be around for a while. And everyone deserves to know that their money isn't going towards funding a genocide, So these are like core North Star planks to who I think we are as a people, And so our district, you see, just like in other parts of the country, shuttering factories because of a lack of investment. You've got rural hospitals that are closing down just as much as you have private equity buying up apartments in downtown Kansas City, but also apartments in Sedalia, farmland, but also the farmland that is, not only people's livelihoods, but, private equity is buying the homes in small America too. I mean, we're all connected by the through line of corporate greed. And, and that is, no matter how many folks want to silence us, especially the big moneyed interest that is behind so much of this assaults, working folks fight back. And so that's what we're doing here. That's what this campaign is about. It is fighting against this corporate greed that has commoditized every bit of our life. We can say so much about how we get caught up in the weeds as progressives. We want universal this. We want to make sure everything is covered, right? And we're not getting caught up in the weeds when we're saying that we deserve it all. That's why I'm running, is because we deserve it all. And the folks who would tell us otherwise are those who are trying to keep us down because they need to line their pocketbooks. And I am just so sick. And I think the people of not just this new 4th District, but just the people of my state, this country, we are sick of being shafted by a bunch of rich folks who would use our backyards as their playground. And this is our home. And so that's why I'm running, because you can see from, like I said, from Kansas City all the way down to farm town, hundreds of miles away, which is how big this district is now. We're not so different. It's an intentionality for sure. I think we need to be intentional about how we talk to our different kinds of folks. But again, if I say you deserve the most in what was the 5th District, I'm not going to say you don't, because you're now in the 4th, and so that's why this campaign, regardless of where they want to put us or where they want to say that we are in, we're going to win, because I am rooted in a community of working class folks who we got the juice and we got the answers.
Well, on this, and let's talk about this a little bit, because we'll get into, we can start talking a little bit about, policy here and what it is that you're running on. But people like you, the kind of campaign that you're trying to run here, I think that is unique compared to, your typical Democrat when they see these redistricting, gerrymandering fights, right? They might say, hey, this isn't a district that I'm going to run in because I don't think that my message will work here. What is it about your kind of politics that, not saying that's not difficult when you get gerrymandered or redistricted, but you think that you have like a real shot to maybe reach folks who maybe your more typical moderate or conservative Democrat might not be able to?
Well, first thing is just you gotta have conversations with folks. And the bought and paid for, the corporate types, they're not interested in those kind of conversations, because if they were, they would understand that their worldview was incorrect, because it's not that our folks, our rural folks or suburban folks are like more close to the center. Like, no, I'm knocking doors now in all parts of this district. And I got people saying that like the rent is too damn high. And I got folks who are saying oligarchy because they know it's a bunch of rich assholes who are making that their rent is higher and that their prices for this, that, and everything is going up higher, And so I think it's an unapologetic moral clarity. And I think that when you're unbought and you are, unpaid for, you can speak on that. We don't take any corporate money in this race. In fact, one of the first groups to reach out to us before we even publicly announced was AIPAC. And the first thing we said was F you, because that's not how we do things. But also, like, that is how gross this system is. And so, who knows that? Are folks on the ground. And so I'm just amplifying what's already been said. So if I got folks saying that the rent's too damn high, so when I say we need to champion social housing and we need to strengthen renter protections and make sure that our folks are housed, that's not me reading some like liberal professor. That's me talking to the homies and saying, yeah, we need to make sure our people are housed. Or when I say, what is it that, is missing from your life? And someone says, I don't have health care right now. How dare I say we need to give you just a little bit on the edges to have a little breathing room? You just told me you're drowning. So the only thing that I can in good faith is to say you need universal health care, And so all these things, these are populist visions. These are just messages that make our people whole, like what a concept. Our people who want to be seen, who want to be, right now, there are so many people in our community who aren't being heard. They aren't being seen. And what all that means is that you can't feel what we feel. And there is something really basic in all of us, is that we just want to know that somebody gives a damn. And like, why doesn't our government give a damn? And like, that's why we're running, because you deserve to be taken care of, because you deserve all of it. And our people know that, whether you've got, your job requires you to use public transit. You want to be able to get to point A to point B in downtown KC, but also on the farms in Clinton, Missouri. We all just deserve all that. And there's too many corporate interests that tell us otherwise.
I want to talk about the housing thing, because, from the start of Left Reckoning, obviously the very socialist influence of the show, but another line of organizing that we sort of pegged at that moment was around housing and tenant organizing. And there's this funny thing when we talk about gerrymandering, whenever Democrats lose an election, they think about sending a bunch of liberals to live in these red states. And the thing that those liberals don't understand is you can't afford it, because housing out there is also being driven up by the same forces that have it so acutely impossible in places like New York City. So can you talk about the tenant organizing aspect of this?
Oh, there's power in a union. There's power in organizing, there's just the incredible organizing just here in particular in Kansas City, for example, there's a group. I know you've had some of the folks from KC Tenants on your show, just some of the best, most incredible people in the world who when they say that a better world is possible, like, this is what we are doing to make that better world a thing. And that is just a group of folks coming together with like-minded self-interest, not selfish, but self-interest, and saying that this is what we demand, and that is how we win. That's how you take on fascism. Look at all the organizing from the 20s and the 30s, the labor movements. Like, we have these blueprints. Like, that is the thing that I think so many folks are trying to reinvent a wheel that doesn't need to be rewritten or refixed. The thing is, like, we have a progressive playbook that has made whole our folks. You can call us in the tradition of FDR, the tradition of Frederick Douglass, the tradition of I call myself, a black radical tradition that believes in being my brother and my sister's keeper. You know, there's got to be a better way for us to, as Zohran said, be free and be fed, you know? And I believe that is not, that's not radical. That's just real, you know? And without taking too much of a tangent, like a bleeding heart liberal, I guess, but like, I think there's something really beautifully progressive and radical in the Declaration, right? Like there's nothing more fundamental to that first thing that you do, right? And so like the conservatives, they can have the Constitution, like, cool, it's just a bunch of rules. But like this first line, and again, I'm not star-spangled ridiculous, like, you know, that thing wasn't written for me. But what it did say was life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right? And so you've got this thing that is life. You've got a bunch of folks who are awake. It's not a religious thing. It's just like, here we are. You know, maybe they call us woke. LOL. But you got a bunch of woke folks. How are we going to get any of this stuff done? We decided liberty. That's the democracy of it all, right? And so what we take with that is we pursue our happiness. We find that more perfect union, which means we take that liberty and we find a way to make sure we guarantee healthcare, we guarantee education, we guarantee freedom from being blown up and knowing that our money is being sent to do that. I mean, all these things are actually mandates. And so there's no talking to folks saying, hey, I'm Hartzell, but I'm not this. No, I am Hartzell. I'm knocking on your door, not asking for me a Democrat or me a progressive or me a whatever. I'm not asking if you can vote for me so I can do a thing for you. I'm knocking on your door asking if I can do a thing with you. And so if we're doing this thing together, if we're building power together, if you trust me because we have organized together with our fellow tenants or with our fellow climate activists or fellow decarcerate folks, if we have that relationship already, then like, let's go be powerful. And like, that's how we win. We have to win, especially, you know, coming out of this now, we have to be movements. Like we have to turn moments into movements. We have to run movement candidates. And like, that's why I feel like this message will resonate. I know it's resonating, no matter where they want to put these boundaries, because the person who occupies this seat currently is a bought and paid for MAGA shill who can't claim to stand on the side of you lowering the cost of your prescription drugs because he's taking money from big pharma and from the same insurance companies that need to make sure that we are bled dry, you know? And so, yeah, maybe for the first time you got somebody in Clinton, Missouri seeing a black guy knocking down their door asking to vote for him. But this black guy is saying that MAGA mouthpiece is actually trying to kick you off of your health care. And I am going to say that you actually deserve even more of that. And by the way, why don't you have broadband yet? Why hasn't anyone talked to you about anything else? Okay, yeah, let's keep talking then. And that's how this works. At least I think that's how this works.
So your background is in part in broadcast radio. Is that sort of where you got in contact with a lot of the sort of organizers that are supporting your campaign?
Well, honestly, like it was a beautiful like happenstance because I'm born and raised here, right? So like I'm a great grandson of a former sharecropper. She moved us up here from Morrilton, Arkansas. You know, my grandmother, we still got her signed pamphlet she saw Angela Davis at St. Stephen's Baptist Church, 1967. You know, like I am born into this, like I said, Black radical tradition, but also just a tradition of solidarity, you know, and I like to talk. And it just so happened that one happy accident led to the other. And so I was able, through this radio career, I was, you know, playing alternative records. So I was playing like David Bowie and Gambino, R.I.P. D'Angelo, by the way, today, Neo Soul. So, yeah, I got a chance as all that happened to amplify the folks who I've already been in community with. So it was just a really beautiful thing for us to all like platform each other. And so I've got, you know, a radio show. We just got done playing, you know, The Killers. And here comes a tenant organizer who just told their story, and then I'll have them send it to, you know, Glass Animals, and it's up next on the buzz, you know, but that's how this story of mine happened. But I think that is just such an organizing activist story. It's like you find our folks and we go be great and we build power together, and we want to now take that power to DC.
Well, I got to say, Hartzell, I've said this story a number of times, but it was talk radio that really was my political education. The KFAN, a sports talk station in Minneapolis, had a bunch of liberals that were against the Iraq War in the mid 2000s, and it was, coming for the Vikings, Dante Culpepper, Randy Moss coverage, and then leaving with, oh yeah, what are we doing in the Middle East now? So I think it's really impressive of you to, have a position like that, which, people could just say, I'm gonna play it cool. I'm not going to enter into any of this politics stuff. But I think it is really important when people do rise to positions like that they try to lift other people up with it. So I think that's really great. Any other issues besides the sort of the big one, that housing, that I think monthly people have anxiety over every time they're taking out that checkbook? What other issues are salient in Missouri now?
I mean, it's everything. It's housing. It is healthcare. Also, let's not stop on the lead. There was a genocide that we funded for the past 2 years. And that is stuff that people in our district, they understand that. I mean, I'm going to the barbershop. I'm going to the park. I'm going wherever. And I've got folks who are saying tax the rich. I've got folks who are saying free Palestine. I've got folks that I'm hearing that are saying, why are we not investing in our folks? Why are we supporting this oligarchy? These are real things that are being said all throughout our district. And, it's really, I'm a Star Wars guy. I got Star Wars tattoos everywhere. And so these folks, this reactionary Republicans and Trump and all them, they are cartoonishly evil to the fact where Yoda said you can't unlearn what you have learned, right? And so, you've got folks now who will say tax the rich because they fucking can't stand Elon Musk. They think of Musk, they got fire in their eyes. But now what I can say is yes, you're right. Elon Musk by himself, he's a real SOB, and he by himself owns more than the bottom 52%, and that ain't right. And I got grandma says, girl, that ain't right. And then I can say, but grandma, but guess what? It's him and his buddies, not just Zuckerberg and Bezos. They also suck cartoonishly. But grandma, the top 1% owns the bottom 93% of the bottom wealth. And then grandma says, oh, well, okay. So now it's she knows, she has this idea. She's named the enemy, as what we've talked a lot about in the progressive space, right? Is how important it is to name this villain. She knows this villain. She knows what this villain has done to her. She knows what Elon has done to her sisters who had just saw all of their benefits slashed. My grandmother who is in assisted living now, right? And so think about what Doge and everything that has happened with Social Security, all that. So this woman now has been radicalized at 90 years old against this oligarch. And now I'm saying, look at all the coaching tree of oligarchs that have been running this thing alongside him. And then she says, well, damn, Hartzell, Bernie might have been right. And this is a 90-year-old woman who I think now, has even had, at 90 years old, her worldview challenged. And to see how my grandmother saw that worldview challenged. But you've got establishment Democrats, you've got folks who are supposedly in power who just refuse to put their blinders on, who will continue to remain in a corporate worldview that began and ended, somewhere between the years of 73 and 96, maybe. Maybe up until Obama. Everything ended after Obama, I guess, and everything was smooth off into the sunset. But, you can't tell me that what's happening isn't real. Because like I said, knocking on these doors and what people would consider a now, new district of R plus whatever, I don't believe it. Because this is the show me state in Missouri, and our people have seen Trump and these Republicans. They have seen how they have shown their ass, and now our folks are going to come for theirs. And that's how we're going to make it to DC.
It's never too late and honestly, it's not about the individuals. It's about, weighing political power, but it's a nice thing to bring somebody around on these sorts of issues that, they can name the problem with the world, regardless of what old they are, how old they are. It's just about being have a proper orientation on this planet. Well, Hartzell, good luck. Where can people follow the campaign?
Oh my gosh. Follow me all over the place. It is Hartzell for KC. That's FOR. That's on all the socials. The website is hartzellforcongress.com. Yeah, we got us is the tagline. I am running because we deserve it all. You know, people say that we're radical. I think it's radical that we have folks that are unhoused as we speak, that we've got kids who are going into debt trying to pay for lunch. I think it's radical that we are just okay, that we will see hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians die because we signed off on it. And then just imagine that we can go to work the next day and pretend like nothing happened. And so there's a lot of folks who are understanding that this ain't right, that ain't right. And, you know, when we say a better world is possible, we are naming what it is we want to see, and we're building it together. And I hope that you all will allow me to join you all in this struggle. And this is how I'm doing it. I thank you all for what you're doing. And anyone listening at home, hartzellforcongress.com. We all got our role to play in the wars to come. So let's go.
Hartzell Gray, thank you so much, man.
Appreciate y'all.
Welcome back, Left Reckoners. Matt Leck here. Hey, David.
Hey, man. Happy to be here.
And I am happy we are joined once again by Alex Skopic, a writer and editor at the great Current Affairs magazine, which everyone should be subscribed to. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I say always a pleasure to come on.
You have a great piece in that went up, I believe, 5 days ago at Current Affairs. This is why you don't let libertarians run your country, and this comes to us. This comes to us at a certain. I mean, it would seem like a dire time for Argentina. They received one $20 billion bailout from the IMF earlier in the year, and just got a swap, a currency swap from our government worth $20 billion. And can we look in, David? Do we want to see how it's been? This is sort of the mood in Argentina as we've bailed them out.
You know, we have this from live on the ground in Argentina. President Milei giving a somber address to the country about the fiscal cliff that they're on.
Espero que alguna vez al ver sus ojos me dé alguna noche de hombre en mi boca no hay control.
This is, by the way, not us messing around here, folks. This is literally just the other day him promoting his book. Who's this guy? What's going on here?
Well, that is the president of Argentina. Unfortunately for them, that's Javier Milei, clearly a responsible and level-headed guy.
And we should point out for folks, what's the situation besides, I mean, one stat that stuck out to me, which is hundreds of people in bread lines. So maybe take it easy on the Bruce Springsteen impression for a little bit of a moment. But, you know, what is the situation in Argentina now?
Yeah. So the situation, it's not good. Milei, and it hasn't been good for a while. Milei came to power a slightly less than 2 years ago, the tail end of 23. And at that point, Argentina's economy was like already pretty rough. Like they had a Peronist government for a long time, and they had inflation. I think it was at 211%. And, you know, here we start to get angry when inflation is like 4 or 5%. So 211, not good news. And Milei came in and promised to make everything better through the magic of libertarianism. And instead, it's gone pretty much the opposite and has become much worse.
Yeah, I mean, some numbers you have huge job losses, hundreds of thousands, unemployment raising about 2 percentage points, sorry, 25. Am I getting my notes right? 25% of Buenos Aires street population became homeless in the past year, which is a astonishing figure.
Yeah, there was a local NGO that went out and surveyed people and asked them, well, okay, how long have you been out there? How did you become homeless? And fully a quarter of the people on the street said it was just recently because I lost my job.
And, you know, just before, David, you jump in here, you had a good, I think, paragraph on the Perón sort of pretext to this. Like, Peronism is something we should probably do like a whole episode on. But, I mean, my gloss of reading historically has been it's sort of like a sort of populist Bonapartism. David, maybe you have any want to input there, but it is sort of like it goes sort of in different ideological directions depending on the needs of the moment, and that has set up Argentina for, I guess, this to be sold something that has quickly soured.
Yeah, populist Bonapartism. That's about as good as you can come to a concise definition of it. It's a sort of, it's vaguely, it's started as vaguely left-wing populism, but explicitly not Marxist populism. So it was like, we'll do universal health care. We'll also have some weird Catholic elements in the government. We'll also have some fascist stuff at different eras. It's kind of a grab bag of ideology at times.
Yeah, and I mean, even without going too deep in the history, I mean, you know, we've covered a lot of the kind of ongoing financial crisis in Argentina, and I think one of the things that is kind of notable about it as well, a lot of the governments that we've had in even recent years could leave a lot to be desired. You know, the relationship of Argentina to the global economy hasn't really been set up in a way that is going to help the Argentine working class thrive, right? This has been a country that for years and years and years has been set up in a way where a kind of global financial class has been extracting a lot out of the country. And Milei comes into power not by saying we're going to come after these folks, but by saying, you know, you guys are getting a little too high. Like you guys are like living a high cotton over here, and we're going to start attacking the state.
Yeah. This is something I wish I'd emphasized a bit more in the article, is that, for decades now, the IMF in particular has really been taking advantage of Argentina and giving it these predatory loans, which, you know, they need short term and then they take, and before they know it, they're in a debt trap. And the next round of loans have even more interest and the debt trap deepens. And this has been going on for decades and decades. So yeah, it's definitely the international situation can't be overlooked.
No. I mean, really, I mean, we've covered that a lot on this program, just like the difficulty of building like a kind of democratic movement in that country because of it. But, you know, I mean, let's zoom in a little bit on this Milei figure. We'll go into his kind of like first couple of years in office after. But I mean, who is this guy? Why does his hair look the way that he does? And how the hell did he win office in that country?
So Milei is compared to Trump a lot, and that's sort of right and sort of not policy-wise. But in terms of where he comes from, he's very much a media guy. Like he at one point was a tantric sex expert and taught classes on that. He had musical aspirations, as we've seen. He was a sort of TV and radio pundit for a long time. He was sort of like an Argentinian Rush Limbaugh type figure, always, you know, going on the radio and ranting about fiscal responsibility and that kind of thing. And then he, much like Trump did with The Apprentice, took his media profile and just transferred it over to politics.
And, you know, let me actually play this for y'all, because I think this gives folks a good sense of I don't know, his media appearances outside of his wonderful, beautiful music. This is him talking about leftists.
Al zurdo de mierda no le podés dar ni un milímetro.
¿Me podés definir zurdo de mierda? Que no
todos los que, digamos, los colectivistas, los que ponen, digamos, o sea, esa idea... A ver,
¿Por qué le pones de mierda, digamos?
Porque son una mierda. O sea,
vos mezclás-
no,
pero
pero
eso-
es que
eso
si
es
pensás,
pero
si
ese
pensás
es
distinto te
calificador.
van a aniquilar. Ese es el punto. Es decir, vos al zurdo no le podés dar 1 milímetro, porque le das 1 milímetro y lo tomas para destrozarte. Es decir, o sea, vos no podés negociar con el zurdo. No se negocia. No se negocia con esa mierda, no se negocia porque te van a llevar puesto. Si tienen un...
It gives you a pretty good sense there. And there's a reason that the far right in the Musk days was very, very much obsessed with this guy.
Yeah, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like something Musk would tweet about the shit leftists.
Yeah, this comes at a curious time for libertarianism and free market fundamentalism, because you have this sort of, all the usual types. A great part of your piece is the initial praise that this was agreed with by all the usual suspects, folks like Niall Ferguson, the National Review. Just immediately, well, first of all, what was that based on? Why were they so quick to jump the gun? And maybe just on the surface of it, maybe I would have thought to reserve judgment a little bit on this. What were they seeing that they were so excited about?
Well, yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Because as it turns out, it wasn't based on a lot. There were some initial wins that Milei had. So he did succeed in lowering that super high inflation rate, and he did succeed at first with the currency and making it a little more stable. So he had some preliminary signs of economic gains, and that was really all it took for these people to latch on. And there were all these articles that I cite where it was described as Milei's economic miracle. And of course, the thing about miracles is they're not real. So this pretty much weeks or months after all these articles came out, the news that the economy was not actually thriving and needs this U.S. bailout happened. And I think the reason. There was a great line in David Frum's recent piece in The Atlantic where he's justifying the bailout. And he says, Milei needs this bailout and Milei deserves this bailout because he is something like the hope of everyone who believes in markets. It's like, okay, well, hope and belief. That's a great basis for economic decisions, isn't it?
Well, that's sort of my question broadly about libertarianism is who does believe in that anymore? Donald Trump is pursuing trade wars based on the thinnest rationalizations, accusing Canada of flooding us with fentanyl, which is not to say even if it was for labor, that's not a free market fundamentalist thing. So from the top, I guess are these free market principles? Are they principles, or are they sought for their value as sort of the sort of above us things we should transcend to, or are they crowbars that can help these guys jimmy a lock or something, or break through a locked door and just grab everything they can before they make their escape? Where are we in libertarianism right now?
Well, I think it's a mix of the two, right? I think there are the people in the pundit class who genuinely believe in it, right? There's the Niall Fergusons, Tyler Cohen is another one. They really do believe the state is bad, markets are good. If we just slash the state and make everything based on markets, people's lives will be better. And then there are the people above them who know that isn't true, but for whom it's very useful as an idea because it lets them keep all their wealth and power. Or people like Elon Musk. And I think the second class of people fund the first to say all their libertarian stuff all day.
It's funny, and it's always interesting in media, and I'm sure you appreciate this. There really is very rarely a reckoning, I guess, unless we keep people's feet to the fire. Milei is somebody who there are now so many folks who went so hard for him. It will be interesting to see. I mean, I think John Stossel is one of my personal favorites, and he has plenty of videos on his YouTube program where he's basically saying, not only do I like this guy Milei, but he's actually accusing Milei of maybe watching his program and stealing his ideas, right? So as Milei now has like committed all these horrific sins against, beautiful libertarianism and certainly the Argentine people, I wonder if there will be any kind of reckoning for these folks, but I have a feeling probably not, right?
See, that's fascinating because I haven't seen those videos. But yeah, there tends not to be. I mean, all of the especially in the big corporate media outlets like the Atlantic, you can be wrong over and over and over again and nothing ever happens. I mean, all of the people who cheerleaded the Iraq War are still around giving their opinions.
Let's see if I can get this for you. This is actually Milei. This is the John Stossel program. It's pretty delicious, frankly.
And whatever it spends, it takes from the people.
El Estado no puede dar nada porque no produce nada.
It's why when campaigning, Milei brandished this chainsaw to illustrate how much government needs to be cut. For my TV show, I used to say, you gotta cut more out of the budget and use these gimmicks. Then I used the chainsaw to make really horrible cuts. I think he copied that from me.
Well, he does pay a lot of attention to libertarians from around the world.
Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera.
In the United States, politicians who promise cuts rarely win votes, but Milei won by a landslide.
Wow.
Anyway, I know that's kind of libertarian. Sorry, encapsulated in a moment, bizarre theatrics and then kind of like anti-women.
That's the origin of the chainsaw. Wow.
According to Stossel, at least, yeah.
Was there any point, and you can get into a little bit of the austerity that Milei has pursued here. And I'm asking this more for the audience because I think I know the answer, but was there ever any point where you thought this might work?
Well, no, but I mean, and I say this in the article, it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with the concept of cutting government waste, right? Like you could in theory do a version of what Milei said where you do it carefully and you have actual experts think it out for you and you find things that are genuinely wasteful and cut them from the government and save money. Like that in itself, that's not a bad idea. Like I'm sure we could all name, military spending and police spending that doesn't need to be happening. But that's not what Milei did. He basically cut the things that are most essential and most helpful to the Argentinian people, education. The really striking one is he cut the palliative care from the National Cancer Ward.
Jesus Christ.
Literally just took away people's cancer meds. Like he did not do it in a smart way, which you in theory could.
And can you tell folks a little bit about the corruption angle of this? Because obviously, discrediting libertarianism, that's the main order of the day around these parts. But it's amazing how brazen some of this stuff is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and those two things are linked because, there's it seems, the investigations are still ongoing, but it seems like there was a massive amount of corruption with Milei. I mean, he had this crypto thing where he, on his official Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts, he posted, everybody go invest in this cryptocurrency called Libra. It's going to help Argentinian small business grow. And then it was, of course, the classic pump and dump. It spiked really high to something like $4 billion in valuation for about a half a day, and then just plummeted again as the big investors sold off all of their coins. And this might sound familiar because here in the U.S. we've had Trump with his $sign Trump cryptocurrency that he does. And there was other stuff. There was his sister, Karina Milei, was apparently just openly taking bribes for government contractors to get good deals. There's all kinds of stuff.
But if you believe in the free market, that's just living by your principles, right?
Well, yeah, and you say that as a joke, but for libertarians, you think, okay, what actually is the problem with corruption? If you're a libertarian, I mean, it's a voluntary transaction. Everybody involved knew what they were getting into. There's really no such thing as public property or the public good. I mean, it's hard to see what the objection would be.
There is an all-time line from Milei from September about his sister, who was again accused of benefiting from a certain kickback scheme, and she was alleged to take like 3% off the top of certain transactions. And Milei's response is she really going to take 3% when she could take 100%?
Yeah.
I guess that's libertarian self-regulation for you. There. What does this mean for the world, Alex? Do you think? We've already talked about our own sort of attempt at this, which is Elon Musk and his sort of chainsaw, and even the Musk defenders. I saw a guy saying that was a waste of his talents, and what we really should be doing is putting Elon Musk in charge of the military or / space force, so he can help us compete against China or something like that. What does this mean? I feel like libertarianism is sort of, they've had too much winning and now they have where can they go from here?
Yeah, they are kind of like the dog that caught the car lately, because they for a long time they were sort of doing well because they weren't in power, so they could just criticize everything and not have to deal with the realities of government or finance. But Musk was very directly inspired by Milei. I mean, he at CPAC literally, Milei gifted him his personal chainsaw that he waved around at Doge. And talk about corruption. He was managing government spending while the great chunk of his income comes from government subsidies. And then also in Britain, there are a couple of prominent Milei imitators. I mean, they've gone a little quiet now since he's starting to crash and burn. But Nigel Farage loves Milei. He said he loves that he's doing Thatcherism on steroids, which is true. Also, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, says she sees Milei as the template for good economic policy. This guy has unfortunately been influential way beyond Latin America.
And you have Milei cited saying all these sorts of things like, my contempt for the state is infinite. Well, it's not so infinite that you won't take $20 billion from the American government, buddy. But what should the role, and you have a good thing in your piece here, but for folks listening, what should we look to from the state?
Well, the line that's even more striking to me, and it was in one of those video clips that you just showed, is he said, the state can give you nothing because it produces nothing. And that's pretty much the core of libertarian ideology right there. They think all the state does is just steal through taxes and then waste what they steal. But it's just, I don't know how anyone sincerely thinks that, because you can just look around in your city and find examples where it's obviously not true. I mean, the state produces all kinds of things, from roads, libraries. I mean, the libertarians have never come up with a good answer for how you get roads. You think back to the Great Depression. I mean, the state literally rescued the country by giving everyone jobs, making bridges and public housing. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of where I was too. On there's the flip side of it, which is when the left sort of wins power in any sort of sense, and you get the chance to introduce your ideas, or even progressive things like congestion pricing in New York City. There's this worry of what if it fails, and there's this massive backlash, and it's very satisfying to see it come through on the positive side, where people just love it in way more than they expect it to. Whereas with this, it's people see it and, oh, this wasn't really built to last. And yet, again, like you said, we have a whole press of media people willing to force these wrong lessons down our throat with the smallest amount of evidence. But it's a great piece. Alex, if there's anything else you want to emphasize before we let you go.
Well, I got to ask him about the dogs before we let him go.
Oh, yeah.
This is an important part. What's up with these dogs that he's got? It's very strange relationships with these things.
Well, okay, so the dogs, there are either 4 or 5 dogs, depending on which account you trust. The dogs are all clones of Milei's original dog. He had this dog, apparently, that he loved, who was named Conan. And then when Conan died, he found this company called Perpetuate, which literally like took the DNA from his dead dog and made like 4 or 5 new dogs. They're all named after libertarian economists. So there's a dog named Hayek, a dog named Friedman, etc. And of course, he claims he takes telepathic advice from the dog. So, which might explain something about how Argentina is looking these days.
You know, I know I'm pretty heavy on the Thomas Pynchon, so excuse me, but this is just like an excerpt from a Thomas Pynchon novel where the guy has a newfangled perpetuate.
Yeah.
I
loved your guys' episode about Vineland the other day, and yeah, it's absolutely like there's a lot of cases like this. Like Trump is also kind of a Pynchon character, but but I think it's also a sign of how capitalism and the government structures of it are sort of degrading and reaching a final crisis. Because you think about the last days of like feudal governments where you had like Nicholas II and Rasputin and all and the Habsburgs and all these weirdos being generated by the system as its apex predators, and we may be at that point again.
I mean, the Rasputin thing, I can't hear about Rasputin without seeing like Laura Loomer's face sort of like appear in the back of my imagination, like some sort of like sleep paralysis demon. Alex, again, the piece is this is why you don't put libertarians in charge of your country. I think I'm getting that title right. Let me make sure. Yes, let libertarians run your country in current affairs. Thanks again so much, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I say always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good call on the dogs thing, David.
Oh, you couldn't. You could have missed that.
And there's things we did miss, honestly, about his weird, like, isn't there like weird
Superman? Oh, his what? Sorry.
Isn't there like a weird sex thing with like an incest thing?
I don't know about that. I mean, yeah.
Let me see.
I don't know. Everything. He's one of those guys that when he first started running, you just wonder to yourself, how can anybody be into this kind of thing? And then, unfortunately, you have to look at that face for a very, very long time. I know he's had plenty of weird kind of sex stuff. I don't know about incest particular. I don't dive too far.
Okay, so immediate fact check. Jamie's telling me the rumors were spread by Milei's political adversaries and critics. In 2023, journalist Julia Mengolini, who was critical of Milei's government, sounds like fake news to me, reportedly suggested that Milei was, quote, in love with his sister. So I'm not sure. I mean, he loves her enough to help her skim grift. And, you know, what's family for?
And that, well,
actually, I had 2 notes before we get on that. First, it was crazy. Hartzell saying, like, before he even announced AIPAC getting in touch with him saying, hey, do you want to run this campaign on easy mode? Was really stuck out to me. Fascinating to see how politics works like that. And also the Stossel clip of him saying whatever the state makes it takes from people is such like a bastardization of surplus value theory that it makes me mad. Like it's and like that's where, like, first of all, I do think that Milei copied Stossel. I think all these guys just rip each other off all the time, and I don't think they're very often capable of generating ideas themselves. But like that Stossel thing, the right is so dangerous when they figure out how to use sort of like left theory almost in a way and like reframe it on their terms, because it's obviously stupid. The state makes whatever workers take. No, if you're a worker, your boss owns everything that you make. If you figure out how to make hamburgers a lot faster, and all of a sudden your restaurant is selling more hamburgers, your boss owns those hamburgers. It's not, that money is not going to you.
Yeah.
It's really annoyed me. But anyway, we can move on.
No, let's get I want to just note one quick thing up top. Tom Alter, who we had on the program recently, just a quick update on that case. He was the professor at Texas State University who was fired for participating in a socialism conference. We had him on the program then. At that point, he had been fired. A judge got involved and forced the university to reinstate him. But as of yesterday, Texas State says that they reinstated him and fired him again. So we're going to try to follow up and keep up with that. But I just wanted to note that this war on free speech, is only getting worse in this country.
I mean, to bring up another Michael phrase, clown fascism.
100%. All right. Well, let's get into this thing, Matt, because, I think one thing that is so nice, and I had the opportunity recently to travel to Mexico, which was, a really great experience. And it was fun speaking to folks from all over and hearing them say similar thing about American politics is that, wow, it's really bleak, but there's one thing that is very exciting. And that is the Zohran Mamdani campaign. In fact, Matt, like you had an opportunity to go and participate in that rally yesterday. It's just worth reminding people of like how important and electrifying this is.
Very proud. I was running the board for the broadcast of the rally. MR was sort of the partner. So we related to like Zateo, Midas Touch, and I was running this sort of $15,000 piece of equipment that I had never seen before in my life. Well, I'd seen in pictures. I'd heard of it, what a TriCaster was, is what it was, but I'd never run one. And it sort of fly by the seat of my pants sort of thing. But I figured out, I got a little bit of a skill on that. But I was sort of anxiously minding that, and I hear a little bit of commotion behind me, and at first I thought like I should try to think of something to say about Zohran, about his like Gaza 5K, like ask him what shoes he's running or something like that. Didn't have time to do that. So I turn around, I hear this commotion, and it's Zohran coming to me, extending his hand. And I involuntarily just said, Zohran. Just said his name at him, didn't say hi or anything like that. And but yeah, I am very proud to have been there to do that.
No, as you should be. And look, let's just get into this because I think this is important. It's something that is a huge pet peeve of mine. Not just because it annoys me, like I don't know, some kind of annoying thing that they do at a restaurant or something like that. Like, it annoys me in a way that's beyond trivial, because what we have right now is there's a certain group of people who I think very clearly would like to see this project fail. And you can never know what's in somebody's heart or somebody's mind. You just hope that it's not malicious, and maybe it's just a little bit of ignorance. So I wanted to kind of set the record straight here because there have been some really salacious and kind of bizarre allegations against Zohran that have been amplified. Jesus Christ, let me take that again. There have been some really ridiculous and salacious allegations against Zohran that have been amplified by folks that, I was back and forth about whether or not to engage in the first place, right? Because you don't want to give more oxygen or attention to this kind of thing. But I figured as a public service announcement, I can sort of take us through this and we can kind of get our facts straight here. So I'm going to bring this up just really briefly, and don't bother any of these people. But this got seen by 1.4 million people right? So you got to kind of respond to it. This person posted a photograph of Zohran. The caption says, as mayor of New York City, I would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. And then saying in September 2025 that Zohran, quote, says, arresting Netanyahu would make me a Trumpian fascist. Zohran never said that. It's kind of a bizarre lie. And this New York Times story that we're going to get into is kind of amazing because it's actually one of the main focuses of some recent reporting on Zohran is how people are frustrated that he will not back down off of this. What it seems to be the sourcing from this and what people were trying to say is that Zohran said to Mehdi Hassan that in arresting Benjamin Netanyahu, he was interested in following international law. Like he wasn't just going to arrest political enemies of his. So he was doing something very smart there, was differentiating himself from somebody like Donald Trump, who is actively engaged in these kind of punishing of political opponents.
He's doing a vocabulary term that they teach you probably around 3rd grade, which is known as contrast.
Ooh, well, this is going to be a big problem. Yeah,
that's crazy though, David, because I saw a reply today where somebody said like it would make him a Trumpian fascist. I had no idea what they were referring to. I had not seen that sort of fake quote. That's crazy that's traveling like that.
Yes. So, and we're bringing that up to start because that's not the focus of today, just because it's going to be interesting as we go into this New York Times piece that everybody's been kind of quoting and questioning and wondering what's going on here. That like one of the big fixations of the piece is the fact that Zohran has not backed down off of this and how the New York Times thinks it's a major problem. I'm not going to pick on anybody. I decided we won't pick on anybody here. But basically what has been getting shared has been excerpts from this piece here inside the improbable, audacious, and so far unstoppable rise of Zohran Mamdani. And in it, let me just make this... in it, there is this line, which you will find if you open up your Twitter account right now, being quote tweeted by many, many people asking themselves, wait, what does this mean? Right? The line says, Zohran supports Palestinian rights. He's not anti-Zionist. He's made concessions when it comes to policing, and he said he's open to compromise when it came to this proposed millionaire's tax. Call it Mamdani 2.0. And let's start here because this is kind of an amazing thing to see certain folks who are, media literate, understand things, taking a screenshot of this and be like, what does this mean? Well, this is a New York Times reporter categorizing their understanding of Zohran's politics. I think Joe Road on Twitter actually had a very good response. I just want to highlight here first. The New York Times is a self-described Zionist publication that manufactured consent for a genocide and called Zohran's primary win a, quote, spiritual Kristallnacht. Why any leftist would trust their characterization of Mamdani's as, quote, not anti-Zionist is baffling to me. And I think that is just like perfect in the first reaction. But what is being talked about here, and I'm going to do a public service for everybody. We will go through the piece and I will actually show you what it is that he's talking about inside of this piece in a second. Do the work for folks who I guess have no interest in actually like reading any of these things or engaging with any of this stuff, just coming up with fabulous conspiracy theories and new stories to tell about one of the most exciting political campaigns and one of the strongest pro-Palestinian movements in American politics. But one of the things that is so incredible here is, as they noted there, is that this is a categorization by a New York Times reporter, not a quote, not a position, and we can investigate whether, something, but like if you're saying like, oh, it looks like Zohran's changed his position here, you should say, okay, well, where's the sourcing on this? Where is he saying it? What is he doing? Oh, this is just some guy's understanding of Zohran who's writing about it. What they are talking about is the position that Zohran Mamdani has held from the get-go, which is a brilliant position. Amanda, you can kind of help me weave through why it is so brilliant here. But the position is when he gets asked on the question of Israel, which every single Zionist in the country asks him time and time again, do you believe that Israel has the right to exist? Zohran Mamdani responds, and he says, Israel has a right to exist as a state with equal rights for all. Can you explain why that's a big problem?
Yeah, that's fundamentally, that's part of the myth of Israel for liberal Zionism, that such a thing is possible. It is not. You cannot, Israel is not set up to do that. They have no intention of doing that. And so basically, you can say like I am supportive of this thing that they can never do, but fundamentally the object of Zionism is to have a supremacist Jewish state in that region. We're seeing the foundations of that being built in front of us. That's what someone like Miriam Edelson wants. So that's a challenge that Zionists can't openly say we don't care yet. Now, when Trump says one state or two state, that kind of worries me because the whole problem with the one state solution where Palestinians aren't given the franchise, and they couldn't because there's too many people there. They would outnumber Jews, which again, Zionism can't permit. The problem with a one-state solution is that's not a democracy then, because again, you're not going to let those people vote. And then it's apartheid, which is what we know it is anyway. But this is why we're in this sort of fiction of legal limbo where Israel is our closest ally, but they can't define exactly where their borders are. And so that's why like that challenge is the perfect line, because it is fundamentally anti-Zionist, but in our media, the way it's talked about, they're not having that conversation of like where they're willing to say like, actually that's not a hurdle Israel's ever going to jump, so what do we do next?
No, yeah. 100%. It puts them on the back foot. It's been a phenomenal answer all the time. Every time he gets asked it, because there is a charged media environment that has tried to push this. Now, all that being said, though, Matt, like that's been the position of Zohran forever. Now, I don't know about you. I have a feeling I can guess. Would it be a problem for you if Zohran started taking a pro-Zionism position?
Yeah, it would. And also, just one note, we didn't mention this last week, but his statement on October 7th was basically copy-paste of his statement the year prior before he was a mayoral candidate. Which
and it was a great statement as well.
Yep, exactly.
So that would be a big problem if Zohran is becoming an anti-Zionist. So here's what we're going to do here on Left Reckoning for our wonderful audience and all the folks tuning into this video. We're going to take a look at this article and see where this information and this big heel turn comes, because I'd be very upset if I found out that Zohran had kind of changed his mind on these kind of positions. Now, it's a long article. So let's say I'm just somebody who's learning about how to use the computer and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. What should I do? Maybe I'll do some keyword searching and see about relative areas. Oh, shit. That's kind of interesting, right, Matt? This note here. Big pull quote. None of this works without him speaking up on Gaza. Talking about Zohran Mamdani, we have it, coming up right next.
Yeah, I mean,
Here's the quote. Sorry, the pull quote pulled me out. None of this works without him speaking up on Gaza, in pull quotes, said Gaspard, the former Obama administration aide, who likened it to Barack Obama's opposition to the Iraq War. Gaspard has been a key figure connecting Mamdani with many of the city's power players in the months. For the average person on the ground, and this is important, okay, so maybe he is vacillating on this. Maybe what he's saying is like his timidness on Gaza is important. No, for the average person on the ground having conversations in their barbecues or on their stoops, there's a way that this issue of Gaza is a gateway to whether or not you can invite this political figure into your living room for a conversation about affordability or education or healthcare, Gaspard said, citing new polling that shows growing disapproval of Israel's actions among Democrats. Quote, you don't get to first base on the other things if you haven't come out against in the batter's box against Gaza. Okay, so the major quote here on Gaza that we're seeing in this piece is about how much it matters to the success of Zohran, right? Not really oh man, he's kind of betrayed his politics here, right, Matt?
Yeah, and even the sort of New York Times summary of this here cites this oh crap, where I just lost it.
I can zoom in.
Oh yes, Mamdani's own allies. Okay, here we go. The issue which he's most steadfast on has been the central to his political identity support for Palestinian causes. In our interviews, Mamdani reaffirmed his commitment to one of his most controversial campaign promises, that he would order the police department to arrest Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu
next up.
if we were to come to New York City. I mean, yeah, maybe if this line is, yeah, go ahead.
The first line, Mamdani has said he would be honoring the warrant issued by the International Criminal Court charging Netanyahu with crimes against humanity in Gaza. Well, this is interesting for a couple reasons. I just want to take a moment and kind of marinate on this for a second, Matt. This is interesting because, just a couple days ago, what did we learn from all the fucking leftists on Twitter about Mamdani and arresting Netanyahu? That he didn't want to do it, that he backed away from it, right? And here it is in this big New York Times piece that is also now telling us that he's turned his back on fighting for Palestinian rights and has become a Zionist, right? I mean, pick a fucking lane and do it. If you're going to cite something and try to use it to justify your argument, do the basic due diligence of checking it out. And the reason that this exists, I mean, we can go through the rest of the piece before I make my final spiel about it. Now, the big thing about him and Zionism is, and this is where this kind of quote comes from, that he's a quote, not anti-Zionist, an anti-Zionist, is you have to remember that like the New York Times position on this is one of the most insane and ridiculous understandings of a very basic moral human rights based approach to the world, which is that somebody who is an anti-Zionist is somebody who wants to see the violent destruction of their enemies. They probably have blood dripping out of the side of their mouth, right? And when Zohran, with his human-based politics, with his human rights-based politics, is understanding and kind of folks to say like, whoa, that's what he can't be an anti-Zionist, because an anti-Zionist, has to act in this kind of absurd and cartoonish and outlandish way that we expect him to. This is the sourcing for the anti-Zionism. Ready? Brad Lander, the city comptroller and the former mayoral candidate, was a key validator and ally in liberal Jewish communities, shrugged off the candidate's promise to arrest Netanyahu, refusing to comment on the record. What's important, Lander said, is a different promise Mamdani made on the night of the primary when he said, quote, "I'm going to reach out and listen and try to understand." And he has more than lived up to that commitment. Lander recalled sitting with Mamdani as a group of Orthodox Jews described being called anti-Semitic slurs on the street, and he said, quote, "He was just very human, empathetic listener," he said. And in that case, he just communicated clearly that he thought that was awful. Great. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think it's a great thing to include in the piece.
Do they have the "we're going to show how it is" quote in this?
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
So you wanted to take us through that?
Yeah, by now we are approaching his campaign office, stuck in a crammed Manhattan service elevator with a very large security guard. With my time running out, the candidate made his response quick, signaling that this interview was now over. Quote, "Is this a campaign promise that's compatible with governing?" Per those contradictions there. And his response was, "We're going to show how it is." That is to me not like I would frankly on this sort of promise, not expect such a clear doubling down on a huge something that's going to, if he does, I mean, he's not going to arrest Netanyahu. What will happen is Netanyahu just doesn't make an attempt to appear in the city. Mm-hmm. If I had to guess, and if he goes through a term and Netanyahu doesn't visit, which is possible, that is amazing.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is that'd be a gift to the world. It'd be
nice if like Ben Gavir wasn't allowed here too. Like all these motherfuckers. I haven't been so disgusted as finding out that guy was speaking like a couple miles away from me. It's so gross.
So here we are. The mystery is solved. Has Zohran turned his back on his principles? No. So why is it that this shit is getting pumped out all the time? And again, I can't figure out what's going on with everybody. Sometimes maybe they are just trying to be malicious. Oftentimes, though, I think a lot of people are just frankly lazy and confused. And one of the worst things about the kind of current information system that we're in is that you can have just a very teensy tiny bit of understanding and propagate it out to the world where it's going to get a lot of engagement. Because look, people should be outraged. If Zohran came out and he said, "I am like now I love Zionism. I think that what they're doing is correct," and I support it, and I'm against Palestine, all this kind of stuff, you should be outraged. But what these people are doing is trying to trick you and to capture that human good emotion that you have, which is support for Palestinian people, the belief in a better world, and a correct suspicion of people who are pursuing positions of power. And they're trying to utilize that for their own ends. And what's truly amazing about this kind of thing is that there isn't even, this is like out of context. It's like, you didn't even go and do the smallest amount of investigation to even be able to pick up a position, right? Because last week it was that Zohran is not going to arrest Netanyahu. Now it's that he is, and that might be a big problem. That's what's in the pieces that you're engaging with. So, you're not even doing the basic amount of like diligence, research, engagement to be able to say these kind of things. Now, you might disagree with me, and you might not think that Zoran's position is strong enough. I would disagree. I think that there's a reason that the Zionist lobby in this country has been fighting tooth and nail to defeat this person, that they would want nothing more than to see him defeated, right? But you may disagree. But you got to go, and you got to click through. And even if you don't have the time to read the long, long piece, just do Control F and check out Israel, Gaza, these words, and you will have a deeper understanding than raging on fucking Twitter like people have been doing for the past couple days. So this is just one example of many, but I want people to be very, very careful about this, because this is something that I think has gotten worse in the past few years, and I think has particularly gotten worse among the left. I don't spend a lot of time on the right-wing parts of the internet, so who knows there. I care about our side, and I care about people not trying to misdirect the rage and frustration and energy that people have around this issue towards some kind of dead-end politics that is against actually achieving a lot of the things that we've been setting out to do for a very, very long time.
Yeah, to me, it's just like the shit we've gotten through with Jimmy Dore and that sort of thing. It's people that recognize that the House has an inherent advantage and somehow like get off on, like, I hope you win, but secretly I'm putting my money on this being a failure. And the truth is that nobody has moved the ball forward like Zohran on the issue on campaigning and politics around the question of Israel. His victory in the primary has absolutely changed the tone of races around the country. He played a pivotal role in what is going to be in I think the twilight of Israel being, like we said, with the Hartzell offer, like just an easy mode thing. You're seeing candidates, Liz Smith, who partnered with Andrew Cuomo to do what was called the Independent Democrat Caucus, the IDC in New York, which was basically a bunch of Joe Manchins at the state legislature that would always caucus with Republicans. She is advising her candidates to call it a genocide right now. Right? That is not happening if Cuomo wins that primary.
Matt, and we're gonna move over to post game, but I'm just gonna say this in kind of closing, Matt. What's so crazy about this piece, though, that everybody is citing here, is that literally the piece is saying what was actually ended up being critical to Zohran's victory here was how central Gaza and Palestine was to this campaign. So this, I don't know what people want us to do. Frankly, you gotta read it a little bit, folks. Sorry, it's just it's an important part of being a human being. All right, we're gonna go over to the post game.
It's fundamental, you might say.
We're gonna go over the post game. It's not over. Patreon.com/leftreckoning, where we're gonna be talking more about kind of the insanity of Zionists and people who are pushing a bad narrative. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll also be taking questions from our wonderful, wonderful audience. If you like what we do, if you appreciate this, if you appreciate these public services that we do for folks, like taking you through behind the paywall of a Zionist frag to get the truth out, support us at patreon.com/leftreckoning. It does mean a lot to Matt Leck and I. But yeah, if you're watching already on that link, will be up in just about 30 seconds. If you're watching on the main feed, click to that YouTube link for patrons only, and you'll be seeing us in just a couple seconds.